Cooking disasters. We've definitely all had them. But let's be honest, not many of us are brave enough or perhaps crazy enough to put them all over YouTube. Well, I'm certainly not, which is why the cooking footage from last week will never see the light of day.
This is not impossible. What is that there? What is that there?
Now, in my last video, I gave myself the challenge of trying to revive a 30-year-old recipe from the Leith's cookery book, trying to prove that recipes from that age still have an awful lot to offer. The goal was to show that with some modern cooking and plating techniques, that recipes such as this can still compete against today's viral TikToks and celebrity cookbooks. Sounds great, right? Well, after my absolute car crash piece of cooking for the venison dish, I came to the conclusion pretty early on that I don't think I actually have the level of skill needed to pull off this challenge. So that could have been that. But instead of giving up, I decided to call in the pros. At the end of the last video, I managed to find some serious culinary backup. Now, if you've watched any of my podcast episodes or plating demos, then James Peck will need no further introduction. In fact, I'll link it here or down below.
Plating is such a key point in food because that's where people can really showcase their skills.
Yeah.
If you can make a dish look insane and taste out this world, that is art and craftsmanship.
Who is a top UK chef and chef patron of Ember Restaurant that specialises in wood-fire cooking in the new Nordic style, which is a cuisine I absolutely adore, and hope that he can bring some of these influences to whichever recipe we choose to do for this challenge. So today, I'm taking a step backwards to go 2 steps forwards, to turn a recipe from one of these cookbooks I discovered in the last episode into something truly special. James, thank you very much for doing this for me. This is excellent. I'm really excited to talk to you about the recipes that I sent through. Did you get much of a chance to look at any of the recipes, and was there anything that sort of jumped out to you that might suit your style, or any ideas creatively that you might have?
Yeah, for sure. Anyway, thanks for having me, first of all. Yeah, the recipes made me hungry, but also, which was quite nice, is thinking there's one that sticks out for a couple of reasons. The style of cooking that I do, I think the venison dish is leaning towards, I seem to be gravitating towards that dish for sure. And yeah, thinking that could be a good little challenge.
I'm so pleased you said that, because venison is literally one of my most favourite meats, to be honest with you. So, I mean, that's good. I mean, I'm not sure I mentioned to you, but I tried making that dish myself and made an absolute car crash of it. So to get a pro involved is fantastic. So, I mean, clearly, I've only just sort of sent you these recipes. So what are your first thoughts about what we could potentially do on the cooking side? And then we'll maybe talk about the plating side.
Yeah. So going with the venison, it's more of a steak and it's from the leg. So I'd love to utilize a bit more of the loin. So using venison, but almost using kind of a slightly different cut that's going to almost give us a bit more of a tender finish and a really good flush of the venison. It's a part of the venison that you see a lot, but you don't get to eat a lot, if you know what I mean. You see it on TV in a lot of high-end restaurants, so it'd be really nice to sort of cook with that. When I looked at the recipe, I saw things like red currant jellies, which are like adding into sauces, and it's almost like a brought-in product that is enhancing, but the chef in me wants to kind of get rid of anything that's kind of associated to a packet and potentially use something naturally a bit sweeter, where we take the red currant out of the jelly and a processed product, and almost maybe input some like a little bit of fermented red currants, you know, a little bit of preserve in there for a bit of extra depth of flavor, and potentially a little bit less sweet. The recipe obviously using lemon, which is great. It really brings out earthy flavor. So lemon's really good to enhance the flavor of the venison. When you're cooking with like mushrooms and earthy flavors, lemon pulls out the flavor stronger. So you might add a bit more value into the lemon element, where we use like a preserved lemon gel, you know, really tidy it up, bring another technical aspect into it, just to add another dimension of kind of complexity for effect, not for cause, if you know what I mean. Like we want it to be nice and sharp and almost a bit lighter. So I'd probably look at balancing the acidity with like a preserved lemon gel, which will also add a bit of saltiness. So yeah, there's a few things about this recipe that really excite me. A couple of things where I'm like, right, we'll get rid of that and we'll bring this into kind of the modern day, probably with techniques. My style of cooking, I'd really want to cook that over birch fire, get the wood smoke in there, get the protein really nice and kind of caramelized. Here, when I'm looking at kind of the looking at the recipe, sort of using a cast iron pan or using a heavy pan, whereas I'm going to cook that directly over fire, and I think that's an element of flavour and complexity that I could definitely add. I'm
so glad you said about the wood fire though, because that's certainly when I was thinking about who I could get involved for this project, I thought James, wood fire, venison. that just sounds an amazing way to elevate it and to modernise it. I know clearly wood fire is not a modern technique.
No.
In the chefing world, in the restaurant environment, it's pretty exciting now, isn't it?
Probably paying homage to even going back full circle before gas and pans and stuff, let's take it right back to the beginning, like we've spoke about in a previous podcast. Let's take it all the way back before all these amazing tools and water baths were invented, you know, using a really good quality wood, but also introducing maybe some like birch stalks and stems or some juniper in there, like fresh juniper, which is synonymous with lamb, that kind of aniseed flavour that works really well with something that's kind of like venison or like a lean bit of lamb or something like that. It's got a bit more of a distinct flavour. Using these will really elevate it. So I'm excited to potentially use some like fresh, you know, pine or juniper leaves, or, you know, so this really excites me actually. And also because this cut is so bloody lean, it's not very forgiving. So being able to put some really nice fresh pine or juniper needles in between the fire and the protein is going to not only add flavour, it's going to protect that and make sure we get that beautiful pink colour that you associate with this cut.
Oh, it sounds absolutely amazing. I'm so glad I made the call. What about in terms of the other thing? Because if you look at the photo that was from the original Leith book, it's got rusty in there. It's got a little bit of green on the side, which I don't think actually says what it is. But in terms of what we could do in terms of getting more colour into the dish, in terms of, again, not forcing it in, but is there anything that you can think of that would help, you know, with the plating of the dish specifically?
Yeah, for sure. I think when chefs look at plates of food, we're looking at like flavour first, right? But you eat with your eyes. You want to be excited to tuck into that dish. I look at that and I know, listening to venison and lemon and red currant, it's taken me to an autumnal place, or it's definitely taken me to a point in time where it's going to be hearty and warming. You know, how do we lighten this up? How do we give it a bit more vibrancy and make it even more attractive to the eye? You know, how do we take from what I'm looking at is an amazing home cooked dish or something you'd have in a really nice cozy wood-fired pub somewhere? How do we put it into a place where you could sit that in a restaurant that you'd serve to your customers at a premium price and really go, look, you couldn't probably do this at home? And hopefully that comes across in a way that you're being treated to this dish. It's not just, you know, rustic. We'll really sharpen it up. I like what excites me is the watercress on the dish is going to be there for a pepperiness, but using kind of like a bit of juniper and a little bit of star anise or a bit of the spiced element that I'll use in my wood fire cooking when it comes to seasoning it. You know, we can remove that, but I love kind of fresh flavors with stuff that's so rich. So using chive, maybe like a little chive emulsion. There seems to be some sort of dip on the side. I don't know if that's like cranberry compote or something like that, but having like a fresh onion flavor, like spring onion, like a roast spring onion in there, using some sorts of really vibrant green. I think when I'm thinking of the time of year, most greens kind of go into hibernation now, but chives are a really good way of getting freshness into a dish, that kind of fresh onion flavor. So I'm leaning towards maybe like a really nice split chive oil through the sauce to add a little bit of like a fresh onion kick acidity as well, which will help balance, because you know, that sauce, you can just look at it, it's viscous, it looks really thick, and it looks really, you want to just jump into it, but you know it's going to be rich.
Yeah. So we can get some green on it. We've clearly got the browns and the reds from the meat. And then in terms of, do you think it would some sort of rusty, some sort of potato-based something as well, do you think?
I really like the idea of playing on the crispy crunch and the rosti, which is quite hearty, but maybe using something like celeriac and potato, tying it in, you know, really leaning on that autumnal kind of viewpoint. So maybe making a really nice presse of like potato, which we could salt bake some celeriac and grind that in there and get like a really nice thick. I think from a presentation point, I think I'd like to get a bit more height. It looks quite a flat dish. I'd probably look at finding a way to elevate it, keep it nice and central in the plate, keep it really clean and a little bit more meticulous in the way of plating. I'd probably, you know, if we're going for a nice loin, cook it really well, rest it, carve it so you can see the blotch in the middle, stand it up so it stands out and it sings proud, and just get a bit of elevation, make it look a bit more interesting to eat. That makes me want to eat it from a hearty point of view, but let's showcase the elements a bit more. Let's instead of having 5 or 6 rosties flat on a plate, let's do one beautiful, nice, tall sort of presentation rosti, something that's going to celebrate and really make you want to jump in. So yeah, I think my brain's going overtime of what we could do, and it's quite exciting. Yeah,
well, this is it. It's a great starting point. It's a great jumping off point, isn't it? Really take something that has worked from the past and bring it up to date more in the future is kind of what the concept of this entire video series was about. So it's exciting that it's something that is creating those creative juices in your brain, and it's a different sort of challenge, isn't it? Taking something that has a start point and seeing what you can do to not necessarily improve it, but update it, revive it, refresh it. You know,
things in cookery move so fast, food fashions and techniques and ways of eating and patterns in people's eating habits. So I think it'd be good to take something that has a really good place in time and bring it into this world and let's see if it does stand the time. you know, let's see if it stands up still now. So yeah,
It certainly sounds delicious, so I reckon it's got a good chance, you know?
yeah.
Okay, so in terms of the plating, we're talking about probably like maybe a stacked or a condensed layout generally, which I guess then means you are expecting the diner to eat everything kind of all together, whereas if it was more of an isolated plating layout, then they can kind of pick and choose. So getting all those flavors right, so you get all those flavors into the one bite, is kind of really important, isn't it?
I think knowing that in this recipe specifically they're using lemon as a seasoning, as I spoke about, lemon brings out earthy flavors. The venison is going to taste more like venison. Mushroom tastes more like mushroom with a little squeeze of lemon in it. The lemon pulls out flavors, so I want with every bite that lemon to be working. So being able to spread the plate out and have little dots of bits, so when people eat it at any point in time, they're kind of getting a bit of everything together, and it's all about the balance. So I don't want someone just to chomp all the venison and then go on to the rosties and then just mop up. I want them to try a little bit of the crunch, the earthiness from the celeriac, potentially with the potato rosti, which is going to be quite earthy and warming, the richness, but also cut through that acidity and that little bit of pepperiness where they use watercress. I'd be interested in using some watercress or like something fermented that we sit on loads of kind of like wild garlic flowers that have been preserved sort of when they were banging spring sort of time. You know, they're perfect now as also little additions for like seasoning and depths of flavor. So I'd be looking to build this in a way that when the diner eats it, they're getting that whole balance. All the ingredients are working together harmoniously. You know, it's not like a thing of people that eat their carbs first and they go on to their meat. And you know, it's something that's going to be eaten and showcased in a balanced way. So yeah, I'm definitely looking for a cleaner plating, using that lemon across the plate, so it's just going to eat really well and do this justice.
Well, that's really good, and I guess, I mean, clearly we can talk about this maybe when we film this together. But in terms of the plate, when I was with you last time, you put scallops into like a bowl, more of a bowl. This is, I assume, more of a plated,
for sure.
dish. Okay.
Yeah, for sure. So I think with the colours we've got, it needs to be a really nice big white plate to celebrate viscosity in the sauce, the richness and depth of flavour. The green's going to pop off it. The rosti's almost camouflaged into the current plate in this, so I really want to celebrate the textures and colours. So I think almost a really big, beautiful blank canvas will celebrate the dish more. So sometimes you can use a really fancy textured plate and it's like a nice dark colour and it does its job. But I think here what we need is something really, really bright, like a complete blank canvas, like a clear canvas for the ingredients to shine out a bit more. I think if you were to see the blushing of the venison and the green pop, whatever we decide to go with, and the sauce on a big white plate, I think it's gonna make more of an impact. You're gonna see more of the dish rather than something that potentially camouflages a little bit. And from the picture, makes me think a bit more kind of like banquet in the middle, kind of people jump in. So yeah, let's bring it into an age where we can put it on a canvas where it's gonna shine.
That sounds really nice. It sounds like, because you have a lot of contrast from the color of the dark autumnal with the clean white, and then it sounds like possibly quite a lot of negative space around the side.
For sure,
which again just focuses the eye and really makes you appreciate that in the middle. So that sounds like a really good idea.
I think in my head, this is a dish where you kind of have quite a big oversized plate, but you're only really using the center of it as like a saucer kind of for a cup of tea, that kind of size, really focus the eye and make it look quite grand and refined. So yeah, I'm really excited. I think we just put this into an age where it's going to be really refined and celebrate the ingredients and probably think a bit more about the plating technique to do so as well.
Yeah, I think that's very exciting, because clearly the photo from the book, it's clearly dated as well, but it's also gone from rustic theme where I think what we're talking about is more precision, more accuracy, modern techniques, and then a cleaner presentation.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be. I think we're going to do it justice. I think we're going to put this into a different world, but still honour the work and the legacy of this recipe. There's nothing wrong with it, but let's put it in a different space and see how it holds up.
Well, do you know what? I'm not sure there's been a time when I've been happier to admit that I've been out of my depth in the kitchen. Getting James involved in this project has been such a good decision. In my mind, he is absolutely the best person to do this recipe justice, because without him, this project would absolutely not be what I hoped for. What started as one idea has now evolved into something bigger and better, both in terms of the story and, more importantly, the final dish. So if you want to see how this classic recipe not only looks but tastes after James and I tackle it together, click on the video here. We'll be filming it from his incredible Ember Restaurant to see if we can turn this 33-year-old recipe into something truly stunning for today's diner. You won't want to miss it.